Tonight, the latest on the investigation into the flight that killed R&B star Aaliyah. Was the pilot authorized to fly that plane? Plus,
we surely should not allow ourselves to be diverted by those who are opposed to this outcome, the outcome of the eradication of the legacy and practice of slavery, of colonialism, and of racism. Everything must be done to address the gross racial imbalances that stare us in the face every day.
the World Conference Against Racism is set to begin, but there are some important issues that won't be discussed. We'll talk about that right now on BET Tonight. Good evening. Welcome to BET Tonight. I'm your guest host, Steve Burlack. More than 10,000 delegates are expected to partake in the United Nations World Conference Against Racism, which begins Friday in Durban, South Africa. But there are some important issues that will not be addressed. We'll discuss them tonight. But first, new developments in the investigation into the flight that killed Aaliyah. We go now to Barbara Gauthier for the very latest on that story and the rest of tonight's news. Thanks, Barbara. Many say the struggle against racism is as much a part of our present as it was our past. So what solutions can be found in a week-long meeting? We'll talk about that in a moment. Stay with us.
The United States today is like the king of the world, and the king of the world has a spoiled son, which is Israel. And by their type of rules, this spoiled son is allowed to do anything. Racism may be illegal, but it is legal for their loved son Israel.
I don't think you can talk about drug policy without talking about race. Racism and race is central to the history of drug laws in this country, and it has a huge impact on drug laws as they're being carried out right now. 5% of the world's population is in the United States, but 25% of the people who are in prison are American, and it's mostly black and brown people.
Welcome back to BET Tonight. I'm your guest host, Steve Burlack. This Friday, a meeting of the minds takes place in Durban, South Africa. Thousands of delegates are expected to attend the United Nations World Conference Against Racism. But many are disappointed that Colin Powell, the first black U.S. Secretary of State, has said he would not participate. Furthermore, the State Department has warned that those visiting South Africa should be prepared for, quote, unpredictable situations. Should the United States be taking a more active role in the conference? And how much can a meeting like this help prevent or eliminate racism anyway? And what important issues are not going to be discussed? Joining us this evening is Lonnie Guinier, law professor at Harvard. Also tonight, James Golden of Golden Creative Communications, a political strategy firm based here in Washington. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Lonnie, I want to go straight to you. What are your thoughts on the Bush administration deciding not to send Colin Powell to the conference?
Well, my view is that the United States is making a mistake by refusing to participate in what can only be an important conversation about race and racism. And the absence of the United States means that the United States is abdicating any possibility of playing a leadership role.
What are your thoughts on that, James?
Well, I think the conference is pretty much a useless exercise in intellectual masturbation. Yeah, I mean it is. What does the UN really do, for instance? The UN, if you go to their website, UN calls for peace in Afghanistan. Yeah, whoopee. James calls for an international kumbaya sing-along. What does it mean? It means nothing. And so you have this collection of delegates over there, diplomats who, you know, speak in the nice diplomatic tones, but when you really come down to what's going to take place at the conference, what are they going to do, what actions are going to come out of it, it's nothing. This conference has been hijacked pretty much by the American left as well as a lot of people who have strong anti-American sentiment. So as a result now you have the calls for, oh, let's turn this into a referendum on reparations. Well, that's a favorite issue of the American left, but what does it have to do with racism as it really exists today in America? Absolutely nothing. Then they're talking about, well, you just heard the clip that you played about drugs. So now we have the crack lobby. Basically, these are folks that want crack dealers back on the streets in black neighborhoods. They want to make their case known. So the crack lobby is there lobbying to get crack dealers back out of jail because they don't like the disparities between powdered cocaine and crack laws. Well, I'm sorry, black people were hurt by the crack trade. So to me, when you look at this collection of the collection of issues that some people are raising over there, it's pretty pretty meaningless. And in a week from now, guess what? Nobody's going to be talking about it.
James, I'm surprised I'm even hearing you right. I'm hearing from you that not only does the UN have any role or any say in this, but the United States
No,
has
I'm saying, look, diplomats have to speak diplomatically, and no one from the administration and no one in diplomatic circles would say what I say and what most people on the street say. You ask most people in this country what they think of the UN, you get a ho-hum. You know what the UN is good for? Three things. One, it's a place that countries send their diplomats to get them out of the country so they won't stir up a lot of stuff there. They send them over here. Two, in New York City, teachers send kids there for school trips for a day. Three, it helps reduce sugar consumption on Halloween. They give them the cute little UNICEF box. They go out and collect pennies so kids won't eat as much candy. That's pretty much it. These guys run around in the little blue helmets and they say, yeah. Sure,
well, I don't think this should be a referendum on the United Nations. I think this is supposed to be a referendum on racism. And the issue is whether the United States is going to play a leadership role in raising the question of racism and then in trying to do something to resolve this issue, which not only affects people in the United States but is a worldwide problem. Now, if the UN is not doing enough,
about
then
making
what is the
another
United States
entitlement
doing?
and handout program and for black people in America. What good does that do?
Well, Lonnie, I'm hearing again that James is just saying that, you know, we've done a lot. We've done plenty. The United States has done plenty to solve the idea of racism. What do you say to that?
Well, he and I are living in a different United States. I think that's part of the problem.
Okay.
And maybe even a different world.
Well, talk to that, Lonnie. Talk to that, Lonnie. What do you see as the problem that we're having, that we're facing right now? Is the United States playing a large enough role, not only within its own borders, but in the world agenda as represented by this conference?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to do is to try to define racism, and then the second thing is to try to discuss some of the issues that are on the agenda of the UN conference that relate to racism as we agree to define it. I think that the issue of reparations, for example, is terribly relevant to the question of racism. There was a very powerful article in the New York Times on Sunday by an historian from Yale University whose name is David Bryan Davis, who basically says that the South won the ideological civil war, meaning that the North may have fought and won certain battles, but that the war of people's hearts and minds was won by the South, and that the critical victory was convincing all Americans of the innate inferiority of black people.
Wow.
And of the fact that slavery may have been a mistake that was morally difficult for the plantation owners, but was basically a good thing for the slaves because it Christianized the heathen.
Oh, boy.
And this is from a very respected historian at Yale, and his point is we've got to deal with the way in which the story that has been told about slavery, the story that's been told about the Civil War, is based on a fiction. It's based on an hypocrisy. And if we don't address the fundamental mistakes that were made in terms of that ideological claim, then we're never going to be able to move forward.
Okay, thank you. We'll have more in this discussion when we come back. If you'd like to weigh in on our discussion tonight, feel free to do so by logging on to bt.com/BT Tonight. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Whoa.
It is fundamental to the life of African Americans in this country that we address the issue of reparations. It may not lead to $1's worth of recovery. $1 may never be recovered, but America will understand what happened over the last 365 years. They understand what it did to culture, what it did to language, what it did to opportunity, and we're not going to let it go.